Well, let's see, where to put it? Okay, I got this. I'm excited. I am so excited. Uh-oh. Probably don't need it anyway. So, well, I had a request. It wasn't for Freebird. It was for a talk on breaking free from fear and worry. And the best part is, of course, this is how God works. The person who asked me to do that couldn't be here today. But guess who needed it? Right? Me and all of us. Breaking free from fear and worry. Well, this is an interesting concept, right? First of all, we know what fear is. And we know what worry is. And we're here with knowing at least this much, that worry is one of the ways that fear shows up. The thing is that when we get into fear, we may not realize that we have a choice not to feel. And when we get into worry, we may realize even less that we have a choice not to be worried. Because what happens when we repeat a thought, and then a feeling follows, and an emotion kicks in, not only does the creative process kick in too, and many of us already know that, but something else happens. A habit forms. Now, I don't have the current version of this book, but there's a book called Basic Ideas of Science of Mind, and some of us, who's in that class? Yeah, okay. So to see a few hands, they're all together now, like a group. And our Tuesday Lunch and Learn, which is open if you'd like to join us. We have a few left, except for that we have the Women's Spiritual Living Circle this Tuesday, so you have to wait. So Ernest Holmes says a little bit about habits. And what he says in here is so fascinating. He says, of course, that to improve our habits, what we ought to do is maintain an attitude of cheerfulness or thankfulness. He goes on to say that every moment should be filled with gratitude. And here's why. A happy expectancy of good is something to which more attention should be given until it becomes a fixed habit. You can think of many others, but unless you are really developing such habits, you are not taking advantage of that exceedingly valuable aspect of the law of mind, which is always ready and willing to accept whatever you insist upon. Key words. And sustain it as a habit, which shall then function without your having to bother to think about it in particular. So, the gift is that when you think about something over and over and over again, the law of mind, which operates in the subconscious, says, oh, I see he or she is repeating that, so I'll just take over and make sure that it continues. Then they won't have to think about it, which could be helpful, right? Yes. Unless what we were insisting on thinking about was fearful, worrisome, for example. Uh-oh. See, habit can either be used for us, or it can make us, prisoner, because it's going to take whatever we think about and focus on all the time, repeat it for us so we can do something else and make stuff happen. So we think about fear and worry, and we realize that if we allow them to continue enough, if we don't get in touch with the idea that we do have a choice about those, what kicks in, it builds momentum. And it seems to have so much power. And then what does it do? It produces results. Big, messy results. And the truth of the matter, what we're aiming for is the realization that we can use that same process to create the results that we do want. But let's look at the messy ones first, because it's kind of fun. I was going to wear that scarf because it looks like flames, but I got hot, so I had to take it off. So never mind about it. Yeah, we'll have to apply that for a special group of middle-aged women who suddenly get warm. Okay, and that will be later. Okay. So, if we imagine that fear and worry, right, creating a habit, kicking the creative process in motion, and producing results are like a fire, we would realize that in a short amount of time we go from a little spark to a big out-of-control blaze, and we need to do something about that. So I want you to invite you to consider something, that if we study how fires are created, how they continue, and how they are put out, how they can even be prevented, that if we study that, we can couple it with our little problem with fear and worry, or anything else that we're thinking about, getting into a feeling state with, and ultimately experiencing the results of. Okay? So if we take a moment and go to our imaginary fire academy and find out how fires are created in the first place, we can use that. Are you ready? Do you see anybody you know in this picture? Okay, I only had it one day in class and one day at the fire academy, but let me tell you, it was a great point in my life. So that's me when I made it out of the shipboard firefighting class. Right? I'll give you a hint. I told the instructor when we started to put on our masks and be dependent upon an oxygen tank, and I knew what we were going to go do next, which was go to find fire. I said, I need to be honest with you. I am frightened. He said, well, thank you for being honest. We'll let you go in the last group. But when the last group came up, he said, we'll let you go first. He was a good teacher. So they sent me into this burning, railway car with a raging fire inside. And my job was to grab the hose and go find it. And when I found it, I was supposed to yell, "Found fire!" Right? Okay, so I did that. I'm smiling because I got out. I did it. Okay. But here's the interesting thing. What we also learned in the fire academy. It's a cool place. In order for a fire to start, you have to have, I'm going to say these in the order that I'm going to continue to say them. Heat. You have to have fuel, and you have to have oxygen. And guess what you need to do to put a fire out? Anybody? Right? Get rid of any one of them. Break the cycle. Interrupt the chain any old place, right? Okay. So what if we say that for us, heat is that first fearful thought? And then what do? Throw fuel on the fire with what? Worry, right? And then, how do we get at oxygen? We yell fire, right? We go around telling everybody in the air, on the wind. We use the power of our word and we give it airtime and we say, guess what? I've got this big fire in my life. Want to see it? Right? Oh, we tell the story with such flair. No pun intended. Flair, right? What happens? We get more of this. We get more of this. So I want to tell you what else we need to know. This is so cool. Science of Mind students, stay tuned. Check this out. So we have heat, which was a fearful thought. Then we added fuel to it because we got to the point where now feeling follows thought, and now we're in a good, a juicy worry, and we're throwing fuel on it, and we're telling anybody who will listen how awful it is, right? The law can only obey. Guess what happens next? Chain reaction. This is the fire tetrahedron, by the way, and we're not going to go to another shape after this. But chain reaction. In this teaching, we call that a line of secondary causation. We forget that original cause is available to us to start something new that's a heck of a lot better. And we're busy saying, yeah, but did you see that? Look I've got evidence now. I've got burns, This thing is eating up all the fuel in my life. Right? Think about that. So, what we want to do then is the same instruction with the first three. We want to remove any one of these in order to put it out. Okay? So, we're going to let that go for a minute. And you can also take off your sweater if you're hot, like me. But that's it. No more. I know. I could be wearing red underwear.
Everybody be listening.
Okay. So what we're saying is that number one, when we have fear and worry producing a raging blaze in our experience, and we're running around yelling, fire, we recognize that the way to put that out is to remove any one of the elements, and it will stop. These are natural principles. They are laws upon which we can count. They are principles which we can understand and make use of, and they will work for us. And we know this because we've talked about it with other things, right? Okay. So, believe it or not, in the middle of an emergency, when something is emergent in our lives, something is emerging from within us, and it looks like a fire, drama, We might be having the experience of loss. We might be saying, oh yeah, something's up to be healed, and the universe has stripped me of everything that I thought was it, and now all I can do is meditate, pray, trust, wait. No other options, right? That's the beauty of it. However, when we're in this place, something is emergent. So remember that when you're experiencing emergency, that something is emergent. The first thing we need to do is handle the emergency. So this is our spiritual triage, right? This is our ER part. This is our EMT part. This is our training for handling the initial experience. So instead of being a metaphysician walking up and saying, well, you just need to stop thinking that, right? And she's all on fire, right? Instead, we're going to start by putting the fire out. Then we're going to look at the chain reaction that caused it to take place. We're going to look at the elements that contributed to it. And my belief, I'm going to go back to, my belief is that this is how we're going to address it properly as metaphysicians, okay? We don't just walk up and say, well, stop thinking that stupid thought, silly, We don't do that. Actually, in ministerial training even, can I get you a glass of water? Would you like a blanket? Are you comfortable? We start there. And then we go back to where this came from. But in the moment, right, when you're in the dramatic emergence, that's not what you want to talk about. You can't even go there, right? Okay. So we start with this. We say there's this chain reaction going on, and we need to break it somehow. Now remember, you could also think about this in terms of any habit. Anyone at all, okay? A thinking, a behavior, anything. We need to stop the chain reaction. So we need to isolate this little baby. We need to quarantine it. And if I don't want to mix analogies, but imagine if each one of these was a child and they were having a fight, you would separate them, right? Okay? Okay, so what we need to do is we need to stop the chain reaction by separating these things from each other. Let's isolate, we'll recognize the chain reaction is a habit. It has made itself quite evident. Then we recognize that, well, gosh, if we keep telling the story, we are fanning the flames. Okay, as much as I'm in pain, maybe I should go to a practitioner, a minister, a therapist, a fellow member of a support group, and I need to think about how I'm sharing, because if I want to keep this going, I'm going to tell the story the same way. And if I'm ready to let it go, I'm going to have to find a new way, or just what? Okay? So then we say, well, how have I been adding fuel to this? Well, gosh, I'm in just an emotional mess. Once in the beginning it was just a feeling, but at this point it's just running like, it's got me. We need to pause and address that with safe people, in safe places, in the right way. Because something beautiful is happening in the midst of all this pain. Something perfect is happening in the middle of all of it. So it's not bad or wrong. It's very useful. And boy, does it have our attention. But again, we're separating the elements so they can't get together and create combustion, which leads to fire. And so finally, we end up back at the point of origin. Number one. This is where our line of secondary causation started the whole thing to begin with. which was the fearful thought. Now look at this. Now we're going to pretend that we got all the way back there. We're calmed down. The fire has been put out. We've gotten some help with what we're feeling and thinking. We realize that we've agreed to practice abstinence from telling the story, right? Because we're going to have to practice some kind of abstinence to break this cycle, right? Okay. So then what? Then what I do is I journal, but find some way, a person you can trust, or a notebook and a pen, or whatever it is, silent meditation, and ask the question. What idea is the opposite of this fear? That's all. What idea is the opposite of this fear? Because if I knew that, and I was willing to begin to focus on this thought, Abraham says for 16 seconds. Some scientist confirms it. Focus on this thought, the opposite of the fear, and what happens? Pretty soon feeling follows it, because that is the nature of things. And then, if we focus on the new thought, and the feeling follows, pretty soon we entertain it long enough to feel an emotion that goes with it. Emotion is energy in motion. Emotion is that thing beginning to gain momentum and to begin to draw to it everything necessary for its fulfillment. Manifestation. A good fire, right? So then we end up with heat and fuel and oxygen and a chain reaction that works for us. So we have an idea, we allow it to move, we want it to move into feeling and emotion, and then we do tell this story. It's the story of the good fire, right? And, some people who can't see it yet will think you're crazy. Well, that's all right. Just let them, do what they want. And there will be a chain reaction, and this thing will become evident, and it will grow, and it'll be bigger, until there's no denying that this is true for you. Right? That's Science of Mind, by way of the Fire Academy. I love it. Science of Mind Fire. Okay, so let's go back to this one, because it's cute. Okay. So think about that. You recognize that when we talk about natural principles and laws, all of that stuff that feels like it's personal, it's only happening to us, and that we are victimized and doomed to have this experience forever, it goes away when we just get a little scientific about it. Right? The good news is that once we understand, again, how these principles work, Ernest Holmes says that to the degree that we understand something, it becomes law in our lives. And when we understand that we are free and that we are creative, we become more free and more creative and more fulfilled. And we're willing to even get that perhaps that we are each points of awareness within the mind of God, Spirit, Creator, the Absolute, whatever you want to call that. We get to imagine that the love for us is so great, and the intended experience is to know all this and to be in it and to utilize it in alignment with the highest truth and the greatest possibility and the fire of the most amazing passion. Purpose. See? Humanity is reaching this point where we're going to resolve our problems. And we're going to have something new to talk about. We're getting to the place where we're going to have to find something new to talk about. And it's going to be celebratory. It's going to be when we let go of all of the ideas that... there's a line from... Ken Carey, Islands of the Future from the Starseed Transmissions. Now we're really getting out there, right? Ernest Holmes didn't say this. He said, on islands of the future, there will be neither guilt nor shame, fear nor blame, only the loving expression of truth and the true expression of love. We are getting there. And this is what we need to know. when our lives are on fire and we feel like everything is happening to us and someone else is to blame, we must take responsibility for that. We must take responsibility for the chain reaction, because what's happening is that thing is being fueled by us. It is growing by us, and it is spreading by us. And while there is perfection in what fire can do, talk about clean slate, right? While there is necessity for that in some cases, what we want to know is how to use it for good. Because that time is upon us. That time is upon us. So I invite you to free yourselves from fear and worry by understanding that all you need to know is how these are part of a creative process that does create a fire, that fuels itself and creates a habit and has momentum and power and creates results. And back up from that. Interrupt the chain reaction. Separate the elements. Stop telling the story. Address the emotions and feelings. And ask yourself, what was that original thought that sparked all this? Choose the opposite and see what happens.